The echo of the gavel cut through the silence like a gunshot. Daniel Mercer's heart thudded in his chest as Judge Harmon's eyes swept the courtroom, cold and sharp. Every breath hung heavy in the charged air. Daniel's client, a thin, trembling man named Thomas Gray, sat to his left, face pale and hands clenched. On the prosecution bench, Reed adjusted his tie with a practiced smirk. "Mr. Gray," the judge said, voice low and resonant, "do you understand the weight of what you are about to say?" Thomas nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Daniel's world narrowed to a single point as Thomas confessed. "I did it. I lied under oath, and I'm ready to face the consequences." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Daniel felt the courtroom tilt. He'd built his entire defense on Thomas's innocence, but now the truth was a wrecking ball. A lifetime of justice collapsed around him. Reed leaned forward, his victory smile already forming. In that moment, Daniel knew everything was about to be lost. After the confession, the courtroom dissolved into chaos. Judge Harmon hammered for order, but Daniel's thoughts raced ahead of the noise. "Order! This is a court of law," the judge bellowed, but the damage was done. Daniel watched as Thomas was led away by bailiffs, his shoulders shaking. Reed gathered his papers, already savoring his victory. In the corner, a reporter scribbled furiously, eyes gleaming at the spectacle. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. He replayed every moment, every piece of evidence, every cross-examination, wondering where he'd missed the truth. Outside, flashes from cameras lit up the stained glass, waiting to consume another fallen hero. Daniel felt his world slipping away, but he squared his jaw. There had to be something left to salvage. The story wasn't over, not yet. Minutes later, Daniel stumbled out into the hallway, a wall of reporters and flashing cameras blocking his escape. Microphones thrust toward his face, voices overlapping. "Did you know about the perjury? Will you resign?" Daniel raised a trembling hand to shield his eyes. "No comment," he managed, voice brittle. Someone shouted, "You defended a liar." The words hit harder than the camera's glare. Daniel saw his wife, Emily, at the edge of the crowd, her face drawn with worry. He tried to reach her, but security ushered him aside. Daniel's phone buzzed with dozens of missed calls. His career, his life, was unraveling with every headline. But beneath the humiliation, a spark of defiance ignited. He would find the truth no matter what it cost. Back in his office, Daniel stood at the window, rain streaking down the glass. The city outside looked as battered as he felt. His desk was a battlefield of files and unanswered calls. Emily entered, her heels echoing on the hardwood. "Daniel, talk to me," she pleaded. He shook his head. "I did everything right, Emily. I checked the facts, I believed him." She touched his arm. "You still can fix this, but you can't do it alone." Daniel met her gaze, searching for hope. The weight of failure threatened to crush him, but Emily's presence steadied his resolve. "I have to prove the truth," Daniel said quietly. Emily nodded, and for a moment, the storm outside seemed to pause. The fight was far from over. Night fell with Daniel still at his desk, pages scattered and eyes bloodshot. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. He listened to the storm and the slow tick of the clock, each second a reminder of his losses. Emily returned with coffee, her presence a quiet anchor. "You can't save everyone, Daniel," she whispered, but he shook his head. "If I let this go, I'm no better than the system that failed us." The phone rang, a single, urgent call breaking the silence. Daniel answered. A voice low and frantic said, "There's something you need to know about Thomas. Meet me tonight." The line went dead. Daniel stared at the receiver, heart pounding. Hope and dread warred in his chest. The fight for justice had only begun. Daniel drove through the rain-slicked streets, the city's neon reflections blurring past as he replayed the call in his mind. Every instinct screamed caution, but desperation overpowered fear. He parked beneath a flickering street lamp and scanned the deserted lot. A figure in a hooded jacket stepped from the shadows. You're Daniel Mercer? The man whispered, glancing nervously around. Daniel nodded. You said you knew something about Thomas Gray. The stranger shoved a folder into Daniel's hands. It's all there, the threats, the payments, the reason he lied. Daniel's hands shook as he flipped through damning photos and emails. Before he could ask more, the man darted away, vanishing into the night. Alone in the rain, Daniel clutched the folder, realization flooding in. This case was bigger than a single lie. Someone wanted the truth buried for good. Back at his apartment, Daniel spread the folder's contents across the table. Photographs of Thomas with a threatening man, bank statements showing large deposits, and frantic text messages begging for help. Emily watched him pace, her worry growing. This is dangerous, Daniel, she said. He shook his head. If someone forced Thomas to lie, they can destroy anyone. Emily stepped closer. We need help. Someone you can trust. Daniel considered it, the weight of isolation settling on his shoulders. He picked up his phone and dialed an old friend, Detective Aisha Coleman. I need a favor, Daniel said when she answered. I might have uncovered something big. Aisha's steady voice cut through his doubt. I'm listening. Send me everything you have. For the first time, Daniel felt a flicker of hope. Detective Aisha Coleman arrived the next morning, crisp and unflappable despite the storm outside. She scanned the evidence Daniel laid out, brow furrowed. If these threats are real, you're dealing with serious players, Aisha warned. Daniel nodded, nerves raw. Do you trust me, Aisha? He asked. She met his gaze without hesitation. I trust you. But I need to verify everything. Emily hovered by the kitchen, eavesdropping as Daniel and Aisha debated next steps. If we go to the police too soon, it could tip off whoever's behind this, Aisha reasoned. Daniel's mind raced. We dig first. Quietly. The partnership rekindled Daniel's fighting spirit. As Aisha left, she pressed his hand reassuringly. Watch your back, Daniel. Not everyone wants justice served. He promised he would, but doubted he could keep it. Rumors spread like wildfire. At the courthouse, Daniel felt eyes burning into his back. Whispers of corruption and disgrace trailed him everywhere. Prosecutor Reed intercepted him in the hallway. Still digging, Mercer? Reed sneered. Maybe you should learn when to quit. Daniel met his gaze, anger simmering. Is that what you'd do, Reed? Walk away from the truth? Reed's smile hardened. Some of us know which battles can't be won. As Daniel walked on, reporters snapped photos, feeding the spectacle. He clenched his jaw, refusing to back down. A janitor slipped him a note. You're being watched. Be careful. Daniel tucked it into his pocket, paranoia creeping in. The legal system was turning against him, but so was something far more dangerous and unseen. Late that night, Daniel sat alone at his kitchen table, staring at the anonymous warning. Emily found him lost in thought, exhaustion etched deep. You can't do this alone, she said softly, kneeling beside him. Daniel shook his head, voice trembling. If I stop now, Thomas goes to prison, and the real criminals walk free. Emily squeezed his hand, her resolve as fierce as his. Then we fight together, but promise me, you'll be careful. Daniel looked at her, gratitude warring with fear. I promise. Thunder rattled the window as Daniel shredded the note and burned it in the sink, watching the ashes swirl. He knew the enemy was closing in, but surrender was no longer possible. The cost of truth was rising, and Daniel was willing to pay. Daniel arrived at his law firm early, tension gripping every muscle. The lobby felt colder, whispers stilled as he passed. In his office, partner Charles Vaughn waited, stiff as a statue. We need to talk, Daniel, Charles began, voice low. The board wants distance from the Thomas Gray case. Daniel's jaw clenched. I'm not abandoning my client. Charles' tone hardened. Our reputation is on the line. You're making us a target. Daniel's chest tightened. Is this about justice or saving face? Charles didn't answer. Instead, he slid a resignation letter across the desk. The partners agreed. Take some time away. Rage, humiliation, and betrayal twisted together inside Daniel. He stared at the letter, knowing what it meant. His own allies had turned on him. Alone, Daniel's only loyalty now was to the truth. Daniel left the firm in a storm of shame, his belongings packed into a cardboard box. Emily waited outside, eyes searching his. "They forced you out," she whispered. Daniel nodded, jaw set. "They care more about their image than justice." He loaded his box into the car as former colleagues watched through glass doors, some with pity, others with relief. "You're not alone," Emily said, wrapping her arms around him. Daniel's pride stung, but her embrace kept him steady. He pressed his forehead to hers. "I'll prove I was right." Emily's voice trembled. "Just don't lose yourself." As they drove away, Daniel's anger hardened into resolve. He would fight with or without a badge, even if it meant burning every bridge behind him. At home, Daniel pored over the case, files alone late into the night. Frustration built as leads ran dry. Emails dead-ended, witnesses went silent, and doors that once opened now slammed shut. The system he trusted had become a maze of dead ends. Aisha called with news. "My sources say Thomas wasn't the only one threatened. Another witness vanished last week." Daniel's eyes widened. "Find them, Aisha. Please." As the call ended, Daniel's reflection stared back at him from the window. Haggard, desperate, unrecognizable. Emily appeared, worry etched deep. "How much more can you give?" she asked. Daniel's voice was raw. "Everything. If I don't, I lose who I am." The darkness pressed in, but Daniel refused to surrender to it. He clung to the last threads of hope. A knock shattered the night's silence. Daniel opened the door to find his investigator, Lena Park, rain-soaked and trembling. "Someone threatened me, Daniel. Told me to drop the gray case or else." Fear mixed with shame in her eyes. Daniel pulled her inside, locking the door. "Did you see who it was?" Lena shook her head. "Dark SUV, tinted windows, nothing else." Emily brought towels, her hands shaking as she glanced at Daniel. Lena pressed a crumpled note into his palm. "This is your last warning." Daniel read the threat, his resolve solidifying. "We're not backing down," he told them, voice low. Emily's gaze was fierce. "Then we protect each other." With trust broken and enemies closing in, Daniel knew the battle had become personal. Days blurred together as Daniel's small circle grew ever tighter. Emily, Aisha, Lena. They met in secret, piecing together clues and hiding from prying eyes. "We're being watched," Lena warned, voice hushed. Daniel nodded, pinning a map to the wall. "Then we give them something to watch." Paranoia simmered beneath every conversation, every glance out the window. Emily placed her hand over Daniel's. "Promise you won't let this destroy you," she whispered. Daniel squeezed her hand, words sticking in his throat. The investigation was no longer just about justice. It was about survival. As the group strategized by candlelight, Daniel felt both hope and terror. Hope that truth might prevail, terror at what it might cost. It was Aisha who brought the breaking news. She burst into Daniel's apartment, face flushed with adrenaline. "We found the missing witness," she announced, waving a grainy photo. Daniel and Lena gathered close, tension razor-sharp. "She's alive, but she's in hiding," Aisha continued. "She saw something that links Reed and Thomas's perjury." Daniel's breath caught. "What is it?" Aisha slid a USB drive across the table. "A security camera captured the night Thomas was threatened. It shows Reed's car, his face, everything." Emily gasped. Lena whispered, "We have proof." Daniel felt hope and dread crash together. This evidence could end the case or ruin them all. "We need to get her to testify," Daniel said. Aisha nodded, her eyes steely. "She's terrified. But if we don't act now, Reed will make sure she disappears forever." The group gathered around Daniel's laptop as the security footage played. Grainy black and white video flickered. A car pulled into the alley, Reed stepping out, face clear as day. He approached Thomas, speaking in low, threatening tones. The group watched in stunned silence as Reed handed Thomas an envelope. He bribed him and threatened him, Lena whispered. Emily's hands shook. That's why Thomas lied. Reed orchestrated everything. Daniel's fury burned cold and clear. We bring this to the judge tomorrow. Aisha's hand hovered over the laptop. We'll need to protect the witness and ourselves. Reed won't go down quietly. Daniel nodded, jaw set. For the first time, the path to justice was visible. But it was lined with peril. Every step a risk they couldn't afford to miscalculate. That night, Daniel and Aisha met the witness, Marisol Vega, in a shadowed motel room on the city's edge. Marisol was frightened, her hands trembling as she spoke. I saw Reed threaten Thomas, she whispered. He said if Thomas didn't lie, he'd hurt his family. Daniel offered reassurance. You are safe with us, Marisol. Will you testify? She hesitated, glancing at the window as headlights passed outside. I'm scared. Reed has power. Aisha reached across the table. We'll protect you. Daniel leaned in, voice gentle but urgent. You could save an innocent man and expose a corrupt system. After a heavy silence, Marisol nodded. I'll do it. Relief swept through the room. But Daniel knew the risk had just doubled. Tomorrow, everything would change. As dawn broke, Daniel prepared for court. Emily watched him button his shirt, worry carved deep in her features. Promise me you'll be careful, she pleaded. Daniel forced a smile, kissing her forehead. We have proof now, Em. We can end this. Downstairs, Lena waited in the car, eyes scanning the street for trouble. Aisha arrived with Marisol, the witness pale but resolute. We move together, no stops, Aisha instructed. The courthouse loomed ahead, a fortress of marble and secrets. Daniel gripped Marisol's hand. Whatever happens in there, we don't back down. Marisol nodded. The team advanced as one, hearts pounding. Today would bring either vindication or disaster. The world watched, hungry for blood or justice. Inside the packed courtroom, tension peaked as Marisol took the stand. Judge Harmon presided, his gaze heavy. Reed's face blanched as the footage played, his threats exposed to all. Gasps and whispers filled the gallery. You bribed and threatened a witness, Daniel declared, voice ringing with conviction. Reed sputtered, this is a setup. But the evidence was damning. Marisol, voice trembling but clear, recounted everything she'd seen. The judge's gavel slammed for silence. Mr. Reed, you will be held for contempt and obstruction, Judge Harmon pronounced. Reed was led away, red-faced and defeated. Daniel felt the world shift, a victory, but one won at great risk. Emily's eyes shone with pride and fear. Outside, flashbulbs erupted. Daniel had exposed the truth, but at a price that was only beginning to reveal itself. The trial reached a fever pitch. The jury returned to their seats, faces grave and unreadable. Daniel's heart hammered as Judge Harmon addressed the court. And, as the jury reached a verdict, the person stood, hands trembling. We have your honor. In the gallery, Emily clutched Lena's hand. Aisha watched Daniel, her expression fierce with loyalty. Thomas Gray sat, head bowed, praying for redemption. The silence stretched. On the charge of perjury we find the defendant, not guilty. An audible gasp rippled through the room. Thomas sobbed, shoulders shaking with relief. Judge Harmon continued, but this court will investigate all evidence of obstruction. Reed, defeated, was led out in handcuffs. Daniel closed his eyes, waves of exhaustion and relief washing over him. Justice had been clawed from the jaws of corruption, but the victory felt hollow. Everything had changed. After court, Daniel slipped outside, the roar of reporters echoing through the marble halls. Cameras flashed, questions flew. How does it feel to win? Was it worth the cost? Daniel met their frenzy with tired eyes. Justice isn't a win, he answered, voice raw. It's the price we pay for truth. Emily found him beneath the courthouse steps, her face lit with both pride and concern. "You did it," she whispered, squeezing his hand. Daniel shook his head, emotion choking his words. "I lost everything to get here. I'm not sure who I am anymore." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. "You're the man who fought for what mattered." As they embraced, Daniel's soul trembled. The victory was real, but so was the emptiness that followed. At home, Daniel faced the cost of his pursuit. His law license was under review, clients had vanished, and the firm's doors were closed to him. Emily tried to reassure him, her touch gentle. "You saved a man's life. That means something." Daniel turned away, staring at old diplomas and news clippings on the wall, now reminders of a life he could never return to. "At what cost, Em?" he whispered. "My career, our future, gone." Emily wrapped her arms around him. "We still have us. The truth is worth more than anything." Daniel wanted to believe her, but the scars were deep. In the quiet, he resolved to accept what he'd lost, even as the pain lingered. Justice demanded everything, and he had paid in full. A week later, Daniel met Aisha and Lena in a quiet coffee shop. They spoke in hushed tones, reflecting on the whirlwind trial. Aisha raised her cup. "We did what the system couldn't. We exposed the rot." Lena smiled weakly. "But we lost so much." Daniel nodded, exhaustion shadowing his face. "Justice isn't clean. It tears you apart." Aisha's eyes flashed. "But you didn't quit. That matters." Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to their sacrifice. "What will you do now?" Lena asked. Daniel hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe it's time to build something new, something honest." The friends sat in silence, united by scars and hope. In that moment, Daniel glimpsed a life beyond loss, a fragile chance at redemption. Night fell as Daniel wandered the city streets alone, passing familiar buildings now strange and distant. His reflection haunted him in every shop window, a man remade by truth and loss. Memories of the courtroom, of Thomas's tears, of Reed's downfall, flickered through his mind. He stopped on a quiet bridge overlooking the river, city lights shimmering on the water. "Justice comes with a price," Daniel whispered to the darkness. "And I paid it." The city's hum faded, replaced by the steady beat of Daniel's heart. For the first time in months, he breathed deeply, letting the night air fill him. The past could not be undone, but the future, uncertain and raw, was still his to shape. He turned toward home, ready to begin again, scars and all. Daniel sat across from Thomas Gray, in a quiet visitor's room, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead. Thomas was free, but he looked like a man still haunted by chains. "You saved my life, Daniel," Thomas said, eyes glistening. Daniel shook his head. "You saved yourself by telling the truth. I just helped you face it." Silence stretched between them, heavy but honest. "What happens now?" Thomas asked. Daniel sighed. "We try to rebuild. There are wounds that don't heal quickly, but you have a second chance." Thomas nodded, a faint hope lighting his face. "I won't waste it." Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Live with honor. That's all I ask." Leaving the room, Daniel felt both the burden and the gift of justice, redemption for one, loss for another. Emily greeted Daniel at their apartment door, her smile tentative. Inside, the apartment was quieter, boxes stacked in corners, a sign of endings and beginnings. "Did it feel like justice?" she asked, voice uncertain. Daniel shook his head. "It felt necessary, not triumphant." Emily led him to the kitchen table, where she had laid out dinner. They sat in the hush, holding hands, grateful just to be together. "You don't have to fight anymore," she murmured. Daniel traced the lines of her hand, comforted by its warmth. "I don't know who I am without the fight," he confessed. Emily leaned in, her voice a lifeline. "You're still the man I love. We'll figure it out together." In her eyes, Daniel found the first flicker of peace since the ordeal began. Daniel met with Aisha and Lena one last time at the Riverside Park. The air was cool, leaves falling in golden waves. You both risked everything for me, Daniel said. Aisha shrugged. Justice isn't a solo act. Lena smiled faintly. We lost things too, but we also proved something. Corruption isn't invincible. Daniel nodded, a bittersweet pride swelling in his chest. I couldn't have done it alone. They stood together by the water, watching the city move on, unaware of the price paid. Aisha pressed a slip of paper into Daniel's hand. If you need us, you call. No more secrets. As the friends parted, Daniel felt a weight lift. He wasn't alone in his loss, nor in his hope for a better tomorrow. Daniel walked the empty halls of his former law firm, invited back only to clear out his things. Each office, each framed photo echoed with memories, some proud, some painful. He paused in the boardroom, where his career had ended. Alone in the polished silence, Daniel traced his fingers over the mahogany table. This was never about power, he murmured. It was always about what's right. He left a single note behind: do better. With his box in hand, Daniel exited the building, sunlight warming his face. The door shut softly behind him, a chapter closing at last. For the first time, Daniel felt light enough to imagine a new beginning, not as a lawyer, but as a man who had survived, changed, and refused to let the darkness win. That night, Daniel and Emily stood on their apartment balcony, city lights stretching endlessly before them. The air was cool, full of distant sirens and new possibility. It's over, isn't it? Emily asked softly, leaning against his shoulder. Daniel breathed deep, letting the city's hum wash over him. It's over, but I'm not who I was. Emily squeezed his hand. That's not a bad thing. They watched the skyline in silence, scars shared but hope renewed. Maybe this is what justice really looks like, Daniel whispered. Messy, painful, but honest. Emily nodded, tears shining in her eyes. The world outside was unchanged, but inside, something essential had shifted. They faced the future together, not as victors, but as survivors. Daniel finally let himself believe in tomorrow. Weeks passed. Daniel moved through the city's early morning haze with quiet purpose, a sense of vulnerability softened by time. On his way to a neighborhood legal clinic, he paused at a playground where parents gathered, laughter and hope rising in the air. A child dropped a toy, and Daniel picked it up, handing it back with a gentle smile. For a moment he saw himself, not as a fallen lawyer, but as a man who could still give something back. The mother thanked him, and Daniel nodded, humbled by the simplicity of gratitude. The world kept turning, indifferent to his sacrifice, but Daniel felt lighter. He kept walking, ready to help those with no voice. The past haunted him, but the present, full of small mercies, offered the beginning of something honest. At the legal clinic, Daniel found meaning in the mundane, helping a tenant avoid eviction, listening to a single mother's fears, guiding the desperate through bureaucracy. Each client brought their burdens, and Daniel met them with patience and respect. Some recognized him from the headlines, eyes wide with surprise, but he shrugged off the past. Everyone deserves justice, he told a young man clutching eviction papers. Even those who can't pay for it. As the day wore on, Daniel realized he had not lost his calling, only changed its shape. He left the clinic as dusk fell, heart sore, but fuller than it had been in months. The law, he realized, could be a shield as much as a sword. In service, Daniel found a sliver of redemption. That evening, Daniel met Aisha, Lena, and Emily for dinner at a quiet restaurant. The meal was simple, the laughter easy, old wounds discussed openly, scars shared like badges. You never gave up, Lena said, raising her glass. Aisha nodded. And you never lost yourself, not when it mattered. Emily reached for Daniel's hand, her touch grounding. We're more than what we lost, she whispered. Daniel looked around at his friends, and the woman he loved. For the first time, he believed her. The pain of the past still throbbed, but in this small circle, Daniel saw the power of truth, loyalty, and forgiveness. They toasted to survival and new beginnings. In the clatter of glasses, Daniel felt the echo of something pure, justice, in its quietest form. Later, Daniel and Emily walked home together beneath the city's glowing skyline. The air was crisp, alive with the promise of rain. Emily squeezed his hand as they passed the courthouse, its stone pillars looming. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. Daniel stared up at the building, memories flooding back. Fear, anger, triumph, pain. "No," he said after a long pause. "I regret the losses, but not the truth." Emily leaned into him, eyes shining. "We survived it all, Daniel. You're still you." Daniel smiled softly, warmed by her faith. "Maybe I'm someone better now," he whispered, voice catching. Together, they disappeared into the night, shadows trailing behind. The past could not be erased, but the future was still unwritten, full of promise. The next morning, Daniel stood alone on the courthouse steps, the city waking around him. He gazed up at the building that had broken and remade him. The stone facade caught the rising sun, casting long golden shadows. Daniel closed his eyes, letting the silence settle, a final reckoning. "The truth cost me everything, but it set others free," he murmured. "That has to be enough." He turned away, the world bright with possibility. Daniel's story would not be written in headlines or court records, but in the lives he touched, the justice he fought for, and the hope he carried forward. As he walked into the morning, a new day unfolding, Daniel Mercer finally understood. Justice wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of something honest, no matter the price.